Hello, BookTube. It's Tuesday, very hot and sunny Tuesday here in Boston. A weird peak of weather, going up to 91 degrees Fahrenheit, but then dropping by 15 degrees for tomorrow, and then going back up to 91 degrees Fahrenheit with a possibility of triple digits by the end of the week. The weather's all over the map in terms of heat, but the weather outside, notwithstanding, Tuesday is the day for tags. And I did a tag already that it was so much fun I couldn't resist, but there's another tag that I saw. I saw it on CriminOlly's channel. And it is the book-to-movie adaptation tag. Now, this is a subject that I've talked about many times on this channel. Once upon a time, years ago, there was a thing called I Love the Book, I Love the Movie tag, and I did that. And I've also talked about this many, many times before. This particular tag is really good, and it was made by Michael Romeo Talks Books, where he's filming out there in the gorgeous sunlight of the rural Carolinas. And Michael Romeo Talks Books did not tag me because he hates me, because I smell. And CriminOlly, when he did his version of the tag, did not tag me because he hates me, because I smell. But I decided to take matters into my own hands and do this myself because it's just too good to pass up. So this is all about just what you think, movies, books to movies, and vice versa. And question number one is, what movie or TV series was better than the book it was based on? So we get right to the heart of the matter. And as you'll know my answer if you've watched this channel for any length of time. You name it. The movie or TV adaptation of a book is almost always better than the original material. I know the standard wisdom is that the book was better. That is almost never true. And I could come up with 100 examples off the top of my head to prove that. Name a movie that was based on a book, or name a TV series that was based on a book, and you will get your answer almost right away. I always say, Ben-Hur, for instance, obviously, Hunt for Red October, Jurassic Park. It goes on and on and on and on. There are hardly any examples to the contrary. Hardly any. I don't like to say it. Obviously, books are my life. They're my bread and butter. But the list is endless. The list is endless of adaptations that are better than the original. And why? Because an adaptation, if it's skillfully done, has to cut out the fat. It has to cut out the palavering that the author is doing because they're so impressed with themselves, or because they want to impress others, prize journals, and that sort of thing, and instead get right to the bones of the plot. That will almost always improve a story, and it usually does. So for question number one, I could talk for an hour. I have, in previous videos on this subject, talked forever, with just an endless list of adaptations of written material where the adaptation was 10 times better. So let's move on to question number two. I'll try and find some of the videos where I've discussed these before and link them down below. Question number two is, what is your least favorite movie adaptation? I don't know of all time. I've seen a lot of movies, but I will pick the 2014 version of A Winter's Tale by Mark Halperin. I was really skeptical when I learned that it was going into production. It stars Colin Farrell and Russell Crowe. And I was skeptical when it was made the news that it was going into production, because I had previously considered Winter's Tale to be unfilmable. Winter's Tale, the novel by Mark Halperin, is pure wonder in a bottle. It is a marvel of a book. Something you absolutely should read if you haven't already read it. But I thought it was unfilmable. And I wasn't 100% sure of that because my faith in such things had been knocked around by the fact that, for instance, I had largely considered Lord of the Rings to be largely unfilmable. Peter Jackson proved me wrong. I certainly thought that Gormenghast was unfilmable, and there was a production with Christopher Lee that was and Judi Dench that was really good. It was perfectly fine as an adaptation of at least an aspect of Gormenghast. Gormenghast what really did it. If you can film anything of Gormenghast, then nothing is unfilmable. So I thought Winter's Tale might be filmable. But this was a mess. This movie was an absolute mess. I think 2 scenes that were any good out of the whole thing. And no hint of the wonder, the whimsy, the sheer awe of the book. And I think I know why that is. I think I know why it failed so conspicuously. I think I could have directed a better version of Mark Halperin's The Winter's Tale if I had the budget and the cast that this movie did. I think the reason was the director. It was Akiva Goldsman, who has since gone on to bend the Star Trek franchise over the nearest bench and sodomize it until it was cross-eyed. No hint of any kind of storytelling or directorial ability there. Probably this is where this particular director cut her teeth on having no talent at her job. That would be my guess, is that it was the director's fault. Then question number 3 is a biggie. What book would you like to see made into a movie or TV series? Who would you cast? Naturally, with a question like this, I cannot name just one thing. I cannot say just one book. So I made a list. Just a little list that we can go over together. I've got it on my iPad here. The first one being A Time for Trumpets by Charles MacDonald, which is his big historical book about the Battle of the Bulge in World War II. So those of you who are not World War II experts, Europe is entirely occupied by the Allies now. Germany is penned into the country of Germany. The German forces are, Nazi forces are retreated along all fronts. They are penned well away from the nearest big river. They are penned well away from the ocean. They cannot win. They have even been divorced from the Ruhr Valley. They have no industrial support at all. Almost all of their lifelines for fuel or food have been cut. The obvious course of the end of the war is visible. And they decide, because they are run by a madman, to try a breakout offensive. Hence the Bulge. The Bulge is what formed in the Allied lines because it was momentarily successful. And pretty savage fighting. And there was a movie that was made. It was directed. It starred Henry Fonda and Robert Shaw, and a great performance by Robert Shaw, who went on to chew the scenery in Steven Spielberg's Jaws as Captain Quint. But it was done by Ken Anakin. No insider baseball as to where Darth Vader got his birth name, but it was directed by Ken Anakin. It was called The Battle of the Bulge. I think it was just called The Battle of the Bulge, and it looked heavily at Charles MacDonald's book, but it didn't have any of the narrative focus that MacDonald's book does. It was a good movie, but we could stand another. I could definitely stand another. Then what else do I have? Oh yes, Bite of the Apple by Lenny Goodings. An unusual choice here, but I think it would make a great movie, or even better, a miniseries. It's her nonfiction account, came out a couple of years ago, just terrific book, I strongly recommend it, of the founding and the origin days of Virago Press, devoted to women's literature, devoted to raising the profile, giving female authors a place to go, get more and more respect. The book just begs to be dramatized. The picture that it paints, which I'm not sure is 100% accurate, but it certainly is dramatic. For the purposes of a movie dramatization, you definitely want it to be just this bored, crusty old lads world that these women enter, where it's just expected that even if your job is full-blown editor, if you're a woman, you'll still be expected to get coffee for everybody first thing in the morning, that sort of thing. The book abounds with little anecdotes like that, and also author profiles. I think it would be great. As a dramatic adaptation, I think it would be great. And we don't get enough dramatic adaptations of relatively modern stuff, of the 20th century. We don't get enough of that. I'd much rather that you carve off the budget from the next 5 Winston Churchill or Margaret Thatcher movies and show us some more of the 20th century than just them. Then we have Douglas Stewart, either Shuggie Bain or Young Mungo. They would be very different movies, but both would be wonderful, I think, if they were done well. Shuggie Bain does an Oscar just sitting there waiting for the woman who takes the role of Agnes Bain, Shuggie Bain's mother in the novel. That is an Oscar role waiting to happen if it's done right. It was done without, stupid melodrama. And Young Mungo, good Lord, if anything, that would be even more effective for the modern era. It's 2 young boys that they would give 2 obviously straight Hollywood actors who would go on and on about how it's not Hollywood blackface or cultural appropriation at all for us to be cast as gay young men. It's just so ridiculous when that happens, and it routinely does, where a casting director will beat the bushes, no pun intended, way into the hinterlands to find 2 attractive young male stars who aren't already gay and get them to play gay protagonists. And the stars will inevitably give insulting interviews where they say, "How can you believe it? In only 15 minutes, he's going to call action, and we're going to have to kiss or something." Well, there were 10,000 gay actors waiting with no work. But you would have a chance for Timothy Chalamet to kiss a dude in Young Mungo, I guess, and it would also be probably an effective movie. Then an old favorite of mine to recommend in a circumstance like this is Dutch by Edmund Morris. Edmund Morris was a respected historian and biographer who was commissioned by the Reagan administration to write Ronald Reagan's official biography. Morris was in the room. He was in meetings. He was at cabinet level meetings. He was given access to Reagan in private in order to be there and get the feel of the man. And he was given unimpeded access to enormous amounts of records. And the book that he wrote was called Dutch. It wasn't called Ronald Reagan, the Authorized Life, like you'd expect. Instead, it was called Dutch, and it was weird. It was weird. It was not what the Reagan administration was expecting. It was not what Nancy Reagan was expecting. I think it's beautiful. I said at the time when I read it, when it was sparking tons of controversy, I said, no president will ever have a better work of art laid at their feet as a tribute to them. Ronald Reagan ought to be incredibly grateful for this. This is not a boring authorized presidential biography. It's something completely different. There's a phantom Reagan throughout the book. A corresponding phantom Reagan that is or is not the man who will then go on to be president. It's amazing. And if you did a movie called Dutch that was made that way, I think it would be astonishing. I think it would put to shame any other presidential movie that's ever been done. Get Josh Brolin to play both Ronald Reagan and Dutch and just let him go to town. Get Morris to consult on the movie. I'm going to say Dutch. It would be a great movie. Oh my God, it would certainly ruffle feathers, because if it were a great movie, great, beautifully written, beautifully acted, beautifully directed, imagine. I mean, Hollywood is entirely full to the rafters with hectoring woke scold blue checkmark Twitter people. Imagine if they had to praise a Ronald Reagan movie. Oh my God, it wouldn't be pretty any more than they had to praise what's her name? Oh my God, it's gone right out of my head. Not Gillian Anderson, who did it for The Crown. Who played Margaret Thatcher in the movie? Gillian Anderson did a great job on The Crown as Margaret Thatcher, but it's gone right out of my head who plays Margaret Thatcher in the movie. Meryl Streep, was it Meryl Streep? She did a great job. And Hollywood was very ambivalent towards that. You're not supposed to like these people. But anyway, I would say Dutch. Then the next thing on my list here is The Mysteries of Matthew Shardlake. The Tudor-era murder mysteries by C.J. Sansom of Matthew Shardlake, the hunchback lawyer in the Tudor courts. In this case, I would say a series. Do a mini-series or a TV series where we follow him in his adventures. Maybe not the adventures in the novels. The adventures in the novels tend to be all or nothing, huge stakes, that sort of thing. Maybe not those. Maybe you make up new cases, but you would definitely have Henry VIII would be on the periphery. Catherine Parr, Henry's last wife, would be on the periphery. Shardlake develops a coterie of enemies. He has a core cast of allies, friends, and family. I think it would be wonderful, absolutely wonderful to do. And I'll leave to others the woke political consideration of whether or not you get an actual hunchback actor to do it. We'll leave that for others to decide. I'm not so much worried about it. The only reason I brought it up with young gay actors is because, come on. I mean, I don't know how much you know about the theater world, but having a big budget show, whether it's a miniseries or a movie, and finding about two gay people, and finding two straight young male actors, you'd have to be trying to do that. I'm not going to weigh in similarly on the hotbed hunchback issue. We'll just move on to a classic that has never, as far as I know, no attempt has ever been made to film it. And once upon a time, again, I would have said unfilmable, but if you can do Gormenghast, then you can do Farford and Grey Mouser by Fritz Leiber. His great sword and sorcery series about a mismatched pair of adventurers from the guy who invented the word sword and sorcery, invented the term. Farford and Grey Mouser are mismatched. One is huge and sort of a blunt weapon. The other is small and sly. They live in a world, a fantasy world populated by wizards and weird people and criminals and scum, and they have all kinds of adventures. As long as you don't ruin it, you would ruin it. But if you don't, if you've got somebody to respect the material, Farford and Grey Mouser are both white. And that does not make me the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan to say that. They are both white. They wouldn't be. In a current year adaptation, they wouldn't be. But that isn't ever an issue, so I'd be willing to just let it go. You just sort of have to let it go. But I'd love to see it tried. the raw material, the dialogue, the great imaginative world, that would be wonderful. And who else do I have here? Oh, yes. Well, when we're talking about pillars of science fiction and fantasy, another pillar of science fiction and fantasy that's never been filmed is The Dragon Riders of Pern by Anne McCaffrey. Far from the Grey Mouser is easy, so is The Dragon Riders of Pern. It is fantastic. It would work perfectly as, for instance, a standalone single movie. Dragonflight, the first book, would work perfectly. A young woman who does not know that she is anything turns out to have a remarkable rapport with the giant genetically engineered fire-breathing dragons that are the planet Pern's only defense against a marauding skyfall of corrosive thread. So the threat is not made by aliens, it is not conscious, it is just an environmental danger. And she is unknown. There are dragon riders on Pern whose job it is to protect the planet from falling thread. But they lack a queen, and they need one, but that requires a tremendous inborn ability, telepathic ability, to bond with a queen dragon. Seems to me that has all the right ingredients for a 21st century drama. I mean, the Pern that we meet in Dragonflight is a planet that hasn't had a threadfall in a long time. It is, in other words, turning a blind eye to an environmental catastrophe that's right on the horizon. That resonates with the 21st century. The female in question is not a Mary Sue, at least in the strictest sense of the word, because Lessa, the young woman, has this ability. She's been using it her whole life on the warped and stunted little dragon-like creatures around her. She just has no idea. And neither do the Dragon Riders. No one has any idea that she's like this. But it's not because of some prophecy. It's because of an inborn natural ability on her part. And there's plenty of science fiction special effects for dragons to make them really good, really convincing. I've often said this on this channel, but it's been years, so I can repeat myself. A climactic battle scene in which dragons are flying and burning thread and winking in and out because they can teleport, if it were done right, would be astonishing to look at. The only thing I can think of that might need a little bit of revamping for the 21st century is that the dragons telepathically bond mate with each other, obviously, to produce more dragons. And in Dragonflight, it's pretty clear that when the dragons bond, their human riders bond as well. And so Lessa becomes bonded to the rider of the biggest dragon. And there are elements there that don't work. They just don't work. They didn't work then, even, and they certainly don't work now. It would be easy to fix that. If anyone at Hollywood is wondering how to do that, my rates are very reasonable. Then what else do I have? Well, my beloved Legion of Superheroes. A DC Comics franchise that I would love to see get a really good treatment. It's a team of superpowered teenagers 1,000 years in the future. And the whole drama of a movie presentation would be that they are not adults. They're surrounded by adults. All the leaders of all the planets are adults. The warlords of alien races, enemy alien races, are adults. The bad guys are all adults. The benefactor of the Legion, the science police that are the law enforcement of the 31st century, they're all adults. And then there are these kids, these teenagers, who have superpowers. And so are chartered by the government, the United Federation of Planets, that would have to be changed, to fight extraordinary menaces. But the tension in a movie for the Legion would be that everyone around them thinks they're just kids, even though some of them can punch holes in planets or fry whole electrical systems with their generated electricity or whatnot. My only worry about a Legion of Superheroes movie is that the Legion, when it was originally created by Otto Binder, was one of the fun parts of it, once it started to step out into the sunlight, was its variety. You had nobility, you had orphans, you had urchins, you had friends, twins, castaways from time, outcasts, mutants, whatnot. A wide variety of the Legion. But that won't be good enough for the 21st century, which would make the Legion entirely black and entirely lesbian. In other words, ironically, enforcing a conformity that is directly against what the Legion was originally. And you would get that in a movie version. I would dread that if I learned that the DC cinematic universe, which could get a burst of enthusiasm from fans with Black Adam, that could happen. If the DC Universe were to tell me tomorrow that a Legion movie has been cast, my first reaction would be dread, not enthusiasm. But I still want to put it on here anyway, because in the right hands, it could be really good. Then what else here? Oh, yes, there's a novel from 2017. It's by Jean Hanff Korelitz. It's called The Devil and Webster. It's an unassuming little novel, but it has stuck with me. It would be a really good movie. It's about Webster College, of typical pricey, ultra-liberal, causey East Coast prep school, where the students are always protesting one thing or another, and the new headmaster of the school used to be one of those causey students when she was younger, but now she's in charge of this institution right as a massive protest is breaking out, and at the forefront of that protest is her own daughter. It's an intimate drama, of the type that Hollywood really doesn't make into movies anymore, but if they choose to, it could be really effective. I thought the novel was tremendously effective. Let's see here. Let's keep going, shall we? Frances Matthews. She has a character called Mary Folger, who is a sleuth solving mysteries on the island of Nantucket. I would love to see a miniseries of the adventures of Mary Folger on Nantucket. Film it on Nantucket, which, for those of you who don't know, is a beautiful island a ways off the coast of Massachusetts. You leave the coast of Massachusetts, you're first going to get in a few minutes to the island of Martha's Vineyard, which is big and beautiful. You go out a bit further, a ways further, you'll get to Nantucket, where some of the older inhabitants still refer to the United States as the mainland, or even just the United States, because they don't view themselves as part of it. Nantucket would be great as a filming location, probably expensive as all get out, but the location would be a big deal in a Mary Folger murder mystery series. But I think it would be really good, and you could flesh out the character of Mary Folger. Get the author to flesh out her own work. That would be great. Then the Stormlight Archives by Brandon Sanderson, big doorstop fantasy novels. Strip them of the endless explicating that Brandon Sanderson loves to do. They would be a very good epic fantasy series on the line of the new Game of Thrones spinoff or The Wheel of Time, although fans hate The Wheel of Time. They say that it's awful. I thought there were moments in it that were really effective. The more I've thought about it, I watched it all when I was up in Vermont, and the more I've thought back on those episodes that I watched, the more mistakes I see, the more problems I see, most of which were own goals, most of which were self-inflicted problems. That doesn't have to be true for the Stormlight Archives. I could see ways that it would go wrong, but get some dyed-in-the-wool fans of the show, that we've got a whole bunch of them on BookTube, I'm sure they would work for cheap, to pare down the thing to its bones and pace it out over the course of 3 seasons. Would work. I think it would work. Then this next one is a passion project of mine. No one has ever even thought about it. No one's proposing it. It would never happen. There was a Boston historian called Samuel Eliot Morison. He was a crusty guy, a character, a funny guy in his own way, a delight in his own way, a dear and loyal friend to the people he befriended. They didn't have an easy go of it, but some friendships you don't get that. And he was commissioned by the United States government to be the historian that recorded the operations of the U.S. Navy during World War II. He had ships sunk from underneath him. He was there to record what was going on. And I have often thought about a movie called The Historian that dramatizes that. You'd have to take some liberties with it, but that dramatizes that, where the captains of these vessels have a historian on board who is looking at the larger picture that they are explicitly not looking at. They are looking at what's in the water right now. What kind of discipline problem do I have on board right now? Those captains were not thinking about the fact that they were involved in the single greatest naval conflict in the history of the world. They could not afford the luxury of thinking that way on a big screen. Morrison could. He was there to do that. I could write some scenes, oh my, that would be wonderful about that would emphasize that quality of history as it's happening versus the big picture of recording it. The historian, the story of an academic who is attached to the U.S. Navy. I think that would be wonderful. We're almost done. This next one, I have heard rumors that this is actually in production. Curtis Sittenfeld did a book called Rodham about an alternate version of Hillary Clinton that was mesmerizing reading. And I've heard rumors that there is a production of this that's at least being considered. I hope so. That would be great. Again, like I said earlier in this interminable list, I'd like it if Hollywood and related entertainment industries looked more at the present, looked more at relatively recent events, rather than always going back much further than that. Then we have The Art of Feeling, Chard Harbach, that does his debut novel, for which he got the gross national product of Bolivia. I think he got, $80 squintillion plus a diamond mine or something like that. He got a ridiculous thing. No mid-list author made any money for the next 3 years because of how much money he got. He wrote a big book called The Art of Feeling that is about baseball. It's also about love and about fatherhood, and it's really good. It's really, really good. You could make a very good movie out of it. It has flab on it, as all debut novels do. Just take the flab off it, and the bones of a great novel jump right out. And then we'll do the end here. We'll finish up on this list so we can finally finish this tag. And that is early work by a young author named Andrew Martin about two, it's a group, but there are main two nihilistic, quippy, believe in nothing, care about nothing, young people in the 21st century, very much in the 21st century. And early work has the bare bones of a kind of plot. Virtually nothing happens in it. But it has the bare bones of a kind of plot that might work, especially if it was put on the rack and stretched into a miniseries. But I do have a stipulation. I want Andrew Martin to play his main character. But anyway, that's enough of that. Let's move on to question number 4, which is, what movie or TV series deterred you from reading the book? And I honestly drew a blank on this. Ollie in his tag mentioned that he watched the Outlander series with his wife and thought, well, maybe I should read one of the books. And then thought, well, it seems like a pretty faithful adaptation. The books are huge. Why would I devote this time to that? I don't know of an example on my own where I have ever... Usually it's the other way around. I read all the time. I read for a living. So usually I have read the source material before an adaptation hooves up onto the horizon. But even in the few cases where I didn't, the adaptation would never dissuade me from reading the book. If anything, even a bad adaptation would make me more interested in reading the book. I can't think of an example. So we're just going to pass on to prompt number 5. What is your favorite book, to movie, or TV adaptation? And here, since the list is enormous, I gave just 2. One favorite book to film, and the other favorite book or source material to TV. So the book to film is the 1937 version of Mark Twain's The Prince and the Pauper, which I love. I could watch that movie endlessly, just endlessly. It stars Errol Flynn. It's got the whole cast of characters from the novel, only without the novel. The novel's really good, but the novel does maunder. It does do a whole lot of stuff that the movie doesn't do. And instead of not doing that stuff and not doing anything in its place, the movie takes out all of the maundering and adds a whole bunch of swashbuckling that is just... the movie is touching. It's beautifully filmed. Just the 1937 The Prince and the Pauper would do it for me, at least today, for book to film. And then book or source material to TV would be Mike Nichols's direction of the miniseries of Tony Kushner's Angels in America. He did a TV miniseries starring James Cromwell and Al Pacino and Ben Schenkman and a whole bunch of other people. Meryl Streep has 3 roles in the thing, and it is. I have my problems with Mike Nichols as a director, but his Angels in America, it doesn't put a foot wrong ever. It is unbelievably effective, just unbelievably good from start to finish. Everybody gives their all in every role. I cannot recommend it strongly enough. You have to sit and watch it, but I cannot recommend it strongly enough. So it will win for source material to TV. And then we'll move on to prompt number 6, which almost got out of my control again, but I'm going to try and be more controlled because this has gone on. Prompt number 6 is, what previously adapted book would you like to see remade or improved, and who would you cast? This is also a very long list for me, but I have just a few suggestions here. Number 1 is Superman, who has been adapted endlessly, and in the last 10 years, always wrong. Always done high church, extremely ponderous, whatever Bryan Singer was doing, sadomasochistically torturing Superman for prolonged periods of time. I don't know. I don't understand the dude bro fascination with Henry Cavill as Superman. I don't get that at all. I don't see anything in Superman casting in most of the big blockbuster movies that have been done so far. And I think it's because they're conceiving of the character wrong. This character should be done in bright colors, first of all. Several of Superman movies, very famously, were filmed in somber monochrome. If you're done in bright colors, and Superman should be a figure of unabashed optimism, regardless of how cynical the world around him is, leave that to Lois Lane. He should be an uplifting figure, not helpless, the way Henry Cavill is so much of the time in his various versions on film. I know exactly what I want this Superman to be like, and I know who I want to play it. A little bit biased here, but we don't need to dwell on that. It would be Stephen Strait. Force him to go to the gym and put on weight, put on some muscle, and put him in a brightly colorful Superman costume. Don't waste any time on the origin. Everybody knows Superman's origin. Don't waste any time on anything else. Put him into a big, complicated adventure in which it comes down to not only him being better, faster, stronger, and the greatest superhero of them all, but also a moral crunch, where it comes down to a moral crunch, where Superman, at the end of the movie, not only has to be up to the physical challenge, but has to do the right thing. Because it's the right thing. Not because he wants to be a messiah. They might stumble, they will fall, but eventually they will join you in the light. No, none of that. Because it's the right thing. Because he's a son of the American Midwest, and he wants to do the right thing. Stephen Strait, you will know because he was the star of the TV series The Expanse. He would be my bet to be Superman, and make sure he has a little twinkle in his eye. Superman knows that he's Superman. He knows that the things he's championing are things, the values instilled in him by his parents. And that they might be a little dorky in the present day, but don't undermine those values and don't have him abandon them. I could write that movie, oh my God, I could, but no one has come anywhere close to writing this character accurately in the last how many at-bats at the movie theater. So I'd say Superman would be number one, but I'm not going to go on forever, we'll just hurry on. The next one is Jeeves and Wooster. P.G. Woodhouse's classic creation of the young ne'er-do-well Bertie Wooster and his all-knowing valet Jeeves, who saves him time and time again from mistakes and problems. And here with Jeeves and Wooster, you're automatically going to think casting. You're automatically going to wonder, what should the casting be? I think the casting was pretty near perfect with the BBC production, with Hugh Laurie and Stephen Fry. Hugh Laurie as Bertie Wooster and Stephen Fry as Jeeves. Only problem I have with that casting, they're both great throughout. Watch as many of those adaptations as you can possibly find. There are probably a bunch of them on YouTube. The only problem I have with that casting is that Jeeves should be significantly older than Bertie Wooster. And he's not. It's pretty easy to tell, even though they go out of their way to hide it, it's pretty easy to tell that Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie are about the same age. And that doesn't work. In fact, in my opinion, that screws with the dynamics. If those two hadn't been so blindingly talented, I think it would have ruined the dynamics. Jeeves should be significantly older than Bertie Wooster. And I have stunt casting in mind for a movie version of Jeeves and Wooster. Jeeves, I would think, would be Gary Oldman. Just sink him into the role. I don't know if he reads P.G. Woodhouse. I don't know if he reads, period. For Bertie Wooster, you want somebody who is not familiar with P.G. Woodhouse and probably who doesn't read at all. Bertie Wooster is kind of an idiot. And I'm not saying this in any personal way, but the first name that came to mind is Nick Jonas, the shortest and most tobacco-addicted member of the Jonas Brothers. He's like 5 feet tall. I think he's still in his 20s. He would work as Bertie Wooster. And Bertie Wooster, keep in mind, spends a lot of time in America. If you ask Nick Jonas to just put a slight posh American accent on, don't try and do an English accent. God help us, I hate to hear that. Just get rid of your New Jerseyisms and give it a kind of refined American accent. It might work. It might work. Maybe I'm prejudiced in that regard because in the original BBC things with Hugh Laurie is constantly smoking. And that would be the way to lure Nick Jonas can't go 5 minutes without smoking. So maybe the way to lure him in would be to do that. I don't know. That was the first pairing that came to mind. I'm sure I can come up with better pairings. Then the next one, I promise I'm almost done. The next one is Wolf Hall. And you might think, well, hasn't Wolf Hall been adapted a few times? So why would you want to adapt it again? I don't think it's been done well. You've got seasoned professionals. You've always had seasoned professionals when this is done. But miscast seasoned professionals. Mark Rylance, no one's a bigger fan of his than I am. I've been a fan of his since, well, when you look at him now, those of you who are very young, look at him now, you're never going to believe it. But once upon a time, a long time ago, when he was a boy, he was the most beautiful boy in the world. Plain and simple. When he was Ariel in The Tempest, he was the most beautiful boy in the world. Now, it didn't matter, because when you were watching, you noticed only the blinding talent, and the blinding talent has stayed, of course. It doesn't go anywhere. But he's not Cromwell. He's wrongly cast as Cromwell. And everybody in the famous miniseries, well, Damian Lewis as King Henry VIII, terribly miscast. What's his name? Who played Wolsey? I forget the name of the actor. At the moment, I forget the name of the actor, but he was terrible. Just a horrible choice. Not as bad as Sam Neill in the TV series as Wolsey, but still bad. So you'd want to recast a lot of these people and maybe stick better to the ominous tones of Wolf Hall, the first novel by Hilary Mantel. And you might ask, who am I casting? And I'm not casting Cromwell. I'd want to find somebody to do Cromwell. I'd have to think a lot harder. But Henry VIII is a key part. The casting is important for this. And Henry leaps to mind for the casting. And the reason he leaps to mind is because the actor is in the Wolf Hall adaptation. The actor is called Ian Batchelor. He's from Wales, which is important when you're dealing with the Tudors. And he plays Thomas Seymour in the Wolf Hall miniseries. And he should just play Henry. He's a much better choice. He's a much better actor than Damian Lewis. That's not hard. But he also conveys menace better, which is very good. I think the casting of Henry is important for any version of Wolf Hall, and I think he would work. And then I will finish up, I promise, with Conan. Conan the Barbarian, a dream project of mine. It's almost impossible now. But a dream project of mine would be the story that introduces Conan, Phoenix on the Sword, where we meet an old Conan. He's king. His raw, adventure-hungry barbarian roots are chafing against him as he sits on the throne and doles out laws. And I would like to see that version of Conan, who faces conspiracy against his throne with raw, unbelievable physical force that not only do none of his conspirators expect, they are not part of that barbarian world, but you get the strong sense in the story that Conan didn't know he still had it in him. Cast Arnold Schwarzenegger as that Conan. Cast Schwarzenegger as King Conan while you still can. That has always been a dream of mine. Do that while you still can. Anyway, that's it for number 6. Then we'll move on to number 7, which is what book series made into a TV or movie series is your personal favorite. I mentioned Stephen Strait here. I will give the nod to The Expanse, which is just wonderfully done. Just wonderfully done. And then question number 8 is to tag some friends who love books and movies. But I wasn't tagged by anybody for this tag because my so-called friends hate me because I smell. So I'm not going to tag anybody. If you like movies and TV, feel free to do this tag and link to the tag's creator, Michael Romeo Talks Books, because he has a wonderful channel. So link to him, maybe go and subscribe to him. But if you have thoughts on this subject, definitely I want to hear about it, because this is fascinating to me, always has been. So I'm going to wrap this up as my other tag for Tag Tuesday, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.